There we go. So we are recording, so I will be able to load this into the Google. No, sorry. Okay, I'm going to save it. I'll put it in the Google Plus community for now. But to let you know, Google is about to wipe out all of the Google Plus community stuff. So we're going to have to find a new way to share these videos with you or with your colleagues. So I will send further information about that. All right, let's keep talking about guided reading. All right, so let's just start the discussion off. What is the purpose of small group instruction? Not necessarily just guided reading per se, but just small group instruction. What do you think the purpose is? Let's start by responding in the chat, and then we'll get some oral discussion going about it. So what do you think the purpose of small group instruction in pre-K is? So just go ahead and type into the chat. Okay, it's very interesting not hearing you, but seeing smiles and people talking to each other. I hear keyboards clicking. All right, starting to pop up now. Establish relationships, individualized instruction. Awesome. All right, you guys are all on the same wavelength. This is how I kind of defined it as differentiated instruction that supports students developing proficiencies. Share with me just out loud, what do you love about small group instruction in your classroom? Just someone speak up.
I love the fact that I get to have that individual time with my 5 or 4 students, and I get to really just focus on their needs and what they need. So I love that it's our like little special meeting time.
That time alone with just them. And when they're little, don't they need that? I was just writing a little blog post for our Read Play Talk site, and it got me to thinking about how much little people crave that time with important adults. Like as a parent, I think about when my little people were 2 and 3, and I'd try to go to the bathroom, and they're right there on the other side of the door, sticking their fingers underneath the door. So hopefully our students, they crave that same kind of connection. So definitely a small group is a time that you can create that connection and build that relationship. All right, somebody else, what else do you really appreciate and like about small group time with your kiddos? No one likes anything else about it?
I've got one.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. They love when I introduce the book for the week. I mean, they just feel like readers, pointing to the words and, talking about the cover. They love all the books that we have in our, box set. So they just feel like readers. They just feel they feel older. If that makes sense.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. Giving them that, and that's part of what we're building right now. Even though there's a lot of things that they're not ready for, they are ready to feel like they're a reader, and in their eyes and their way, they certainly are. Yes. Okay, so before I keep going, because I said we would talk a little bit at the end, but I'd love to hear up front, what are some of the challenges that you face with small group instruction? And let's just share those out, just kind of out loud. What are some of the challenges you face with small group instruction? I know one that everybody's probably saying, especially in a half-day program.
Time.
Yay, somebody had to say time. So time's definitely always a struggle. What's something else that makes small group instruction difficult?
I know personally from my experience, it's the amount of kids that I have. Mm-hmm. And trying to just really meet with every group on their time and their day. So just being like real intentional with my time, and just, sometimes, my lowest group will have 5 kids, and, so we'll have to kind of split that up, but then that kind of takes away from the other group. So it's kind of hard with the amount of kids that I have to really give each group that, time that they are allowed, that they need.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that one word, being intentional with your time. And sometimes we have the greatest plans and certain things happen in our day and can interrupt that flow. Who was that just shared? I couldn't find you.
Oh,
on the
Danielle.
picture. Okay, I thought that's who it was. Are you listening or are you on video also?
I'm listening.
Okay, that's why I couldn't find you. I was like, what's wrong with my screen? So definitely time. What about planning for each of your groups? Does that ever seem to be a struggle? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I know. Sometimes I hear that really kind of across in about any grade. When you've got more than one small group to plan for, really being intentional about differentiating that instruction can sometimes be hard. What about materials? Is there any struggle with materials needed for small groups?
Oh, sorry. It's hard to keep them organized.
Okay.
Group has their stuff ready to go for them.
Yeah. Especially when there's lots of pieces. All right. Well, let's keep diving in. So we're going to talk about small group instruction in pre-K, especially early in the year, may not look like what a lot would consider guided reading. And I know that's kind of hard sometimes, especially for your administrators. They walk in and they want to see that lesson plan or lesson structure, just like what kinder and first are doing. But it is important to keep in mind, and I know you guys are probably really good at it, that your friends can only sit for a certain amount of time. So for some of them, 15 minutes and 15 to 20 minutes may still be too long. So as we look at this, we're going to look at Jan Richardson's lesson structure and format in her pre-A lesson. As we talk about it, be thinking about how you have to adjust to fit your half-day program and to fit the attention needs of your young learners. All right, so let's get started. I want you to read this quote here. This is something that I took out of the yellow Next Steps Forward book. Now, I know not all of you have this one in your classroom, but it should be on your campus somewhere. Your instructional coach has a copy, and all of your K2 teachers have a copy of this. So far, we have not purchased it for you guys because there's really just a small section of it that applies to you. But if you will, let's look at this quote. I'm not going to read it out loud to you. I would like you to read that and just respond to it. What is it challenge in your thinking, or what do you think about it as you read it? Just kind of an open response. What goes through your mind as you read this quote? And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. So just respond in the chat box. I'll give everyone a little bit of a minute to All right, so I'm seeing lots of friends. Sorry, I don't mean to call you friends like I would my kiddos, but I see lots of you replying with, I agree. They don't need to. What is the message you would communicate to a parent or to someone else who doesn't know early literacy instruction without using these words? Kind of in your own words, how would you explain this or communicate this to someone else? Somebody just share out loud. No one? Anyone? Oops, sorry. We'll get there. Nobody. I'm seeing a lot of your responses. As soon as kids know a few letters, they can begin scaffolding. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. It looks like and sounds like most of you definitely agree with this quote. So I want you to stop and think about for a minute. If this is true, if we agree that they don't have to have everything in place before we start to put a book in their hand, like Andrea was talking about how it helps them to feel successful, why is it that sometimes we either put the book in their hand and just read it and don't build on any of those other skills, or vice versa? Why do we pull a small group and we might only work with letters before sending them away and not ever getting to the book? Just kind of keep that in mind about why do you think that happens sometimes. I'm sure time is going to be one of the factors, but keep that in the back of your mind as we keep going. And I'm going to keep us moving, though, for time. So we know that the pre-A reader should be children who know fewer than 40 upper and lowercase letters, lack concepts of print, need help writing their first name, and need letter formation support. Let's go back. So share with us about how many of your kids are still within needing support on these skills. All of them? Half of them? Majority of them? What would you say? Feel free to speak up. Don't forget to unmute yourself. Who was that? Somebody said something.
Majority.
Majority. Okay. Anybody have any kids who aren't maybe even ready for the full structure of the pre-A plan, who are still just needing, I'm trying to think. Let me rephrase that question. How many of you, and you can respond in the comments if you want instead of out loud, how many of you still have a good handful of kiddos who you're having a hard time getting through more than one component of this lesson? Respond. You can respond, hey, that's me, or yes, my kids can only do about 2 activities before I have to send them away. More than half, majority, around half. Yes. Okay. Okay. That just kind of gives me an idea of where you guys are at. So we're going to keep moving. So the pre-A lesson, I'm going to skip past this slide just for this one and go here. So here is what the newest format of the pre-A lesson plan looks like. This may look a little different than what some of you guys have if you're using the ones that are in our curriculum resources. Because you guys don't have this book, I can't put this particular format into the files for you, but since you do have the book on your campus, if you like the way this is laid out in the color, you do have access to that through one of your peers' books. All of the components are the same. None of the parts for you guys have really changed, so it's just a little bit of a change in the look. So let's go back for a minute because I want to talk about materials. Here's a list of all the materials that you need for a pre-A lesson. I'm going to let you look at those and just kind of think to yourself, how many of you actually truly have all of those materials ready and close to your table for each group? I'll give you a second to read through. So as you're looking, I would love to know which materials do you have the hardest time either organizing, or maybe you don't even have those materials. Let me hear from someone who is struggling with some part of the materials. Go ahead.
What's the level A book timer?
Oh, sorry, that should probably be listed too. Level A book and a timer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No, thank you. That's my, should have hit return right there.
Okay. All right.
So I just want to double check. So alphabet books. Is this anything that anyone is still having trouble or don't have copies of, or you don't know what it is? I'm not hearing anyone, so I'm going to keep moving. All right. The charts, alphabet charts and plastic sheet protectors. Anyone not sure what that is? This is a piece that's a lot of, oh, goodness. I need to use my pointer. There we go. So this one here, I'm going to actually, let me see if I can escape here and go to her website and show you. So this, what you see now is actually the Next Steps Forward website. And if you borrow a book from someone, it has a link to this right in the front, but right up here you can see where it's found, scholastic.com NSF for Next Steps Forward resources. And these are all the downloads that are available. I want to show you. There we go. So as I go through, I see lots of different alphabet charts available. You may be using the one that matches your word wall cards, because this one, as you can see, the B is not going to match exactly what you have for your B on your word wall. What would be the advantage or disadvantage of using this chart versus the one that matches your word wall? And you can say, you may see an advantage to using this one. Or what would be a disadvantage?
I mean, I think I see both. I see the advantages and I see the disadvantages.
Yeah.
The disadvantage for me is that my kids, like my low babies, they rely on that word wall when they come in back and we do assessments. Because that's, you can tell anytime we're calling out letter names to practice writing letters, that's the first thing, that's where they look up and they are familiar with it. But also one of the advantages is that it kind of helps them to understand, like, okay, B can also go for ball and book or balloon. So it gives them kind of a different, I'm not sure, like it just kind of helps them associate that B and that letter sound with something other than what they see every single time we're doing word wall and small group. So they're getting exposed to different pictures.
Correct. So again, just like you shared, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages to both ways. I think you need to know your kids to know what's going to be best for them. If you don't have a chart handy, oh, did it go away? There it is. If you don't have an alphabet chart handy for each kiddo, you should. There's several of the activities in the Working with Letters require the use of this chart. I do encourage this chart over like an alphabet arc because of the picture support that it has, because some of the activities you do are actually dealing with letter sounds, and that can be difficult if you're using something like just the alphabet arc or something. All right, let's go back to our list here. Name templates, again, just each student should have their name as long as you're still working on names. Now, once they can write their name without an example, you wouldn't need a template with their name already on it. Name puzzles, something that needs to be prepared and ready before you get started. Now, this is the one I was wondering if anyone was going to say they have a challenge with. This 6 to 8 sets of lowercase magnetic letters. Just let me hear, well, no, it's too hard because y'all talk all at once. Go ahead and respond in the comments because I'm just curious whether you do or do not have at least 6 sets of alphabet letters. I would love to know just who does and who doesn't. This is something that all the coaches that are on here listening today, if especially your pre-K and K teachers don't have at least 6 sets of these, I really encourage you to start thinking about a way that you could get those for them. Teachers, this is a good place to use your money that you get at the end of the year. You could use a little bit of that money to at least get some sets of those. I know Lakeshore has a classroom set that would be enough to create around six sets of letters. It's not listed on here. She doesn't list it, and I will pull up for you in just a second. Let me go to my pictures here. Hold on one second. Another thing that is really helpful with those letters is some kind of magnetic tray that they can sit on. It's being slow. We're going to just keep rolling. Oh, don't kick me out. That is already ready and set, ready to go. Let's keep moving. All right, dry erase boards. What are you doing? Screen, go away. Here we go. Dry erase boards and markers. thank you guys for sharing if you have 6 or 1 or 2. Dry erase boards and markers should be ready to go right there beside you. A lot of teachers find it easier to use a basket for each kiddo that already has the marker. I've even seen several teachers who will have whiteboards or shower board that you can get from Home Depot cut down into small pieces so that it can sit right there in a basket, so that you've got a basket with the marker and whatever you're going to use for an eraser and your little dry erase board all together. Pictures for sorting. Now, in that pre-A stage, you should largely be working on initial consonants. If you feel like kids are ready for final consonants, and especially if they're ready for medial sounds, they're probably ready to move off of the pre-A plan. You should have sentence strips handy. Your scissors should be right there with you. You should have a level A book and a timer. So here's my question. I'd love to hear from a couple of you about how you organize these materials. So someone share what they do to have everything ready for their kids. And I know this is just verbally. If you're sitting close to your reading table and you can hold it up for us to see, that would be awesome. Someone share how you organize these materials. Y'all are quiet today. Somebody has to share out loud.
Baskets,
Thank you, Andrea.
marker, pencil, scissors, eraser. And then I do their writing books where you hold the white pages, staple them, where they write on the bottom and I can write on the top.
Yeah, so Andrea, I'm glad you had those right there. So you have one of those for each kiddo that comes to your table?
Yes, I've got like 4 or 5 of these.
Cool. Andrea's mentioning the little journal that you would have, and that actually, if you're following Jan Richardson's plan design, you actually wouldn't need those until they move into that emergent phase. At the pre-A phase, it's still very much of an interactive writing that's done on a sentence strip, so those words can be put together or cut together, cut apart, and then put back together. I'm stumbling over words. All right, let's keep moving. Before I move on, I want you to look at these 2 quotes. I'm going to put this back to present so it's nice and big so you can see it. Loading. There we go. Organizing is what you do before you do something so that when you do it, it is not all mixed up. Or a good system shortens the road to a goal. Respond in the comments, which quote do you like the best? We'll call this one number 1 and this one number 2. Which one do you like the best and why? If you would rather talk than type, you're welcome to do that as well. But y'all are all really quiet today, so I'm offering both options. Thank you, Danielle, for also sharing about your rolling cart. So I'm seeing some like quote 1, saying if you follow everything, if you're organized, everything follows. Yes, the all mixed up. Sometimes my lessons look all mixed up because I failed to organize and get everything together beforehand. I don't know if any of you are like me. Organization is one of those things I have to constantly work at. I know another quote I saw was, organizing isn't an event, it's a practice. So it's something that's ongoing. All right. Okay, so just before we move on to really talk about and dive into each component, I want you to keep that in mind, that if time is an issue, which almost always it feels like it is, I always say go back and check yourself on your organization and your preparedness. How often are your materials really there, ready to go? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we talk to each. Somebody's speaker's really loud on their campus. Okay, so let's look at the plan. Let's dive in and just look a little bit closer. I'm going to actually escape this present mode, maybe. There we go. So that sorry, moving some things around here. Give me 2 seconds here to get. All right, this is what I wanted to do. I'm going to blow this up as large as we can get it. So the first section of the pre-A plan, oh, it's not cooperating. There we go. That's what I want. Is working with names and letters. So I want to look at right here at the purpose. I took this picture out of the Yellow Next Steps book because I want you to stop and think really about the purpose of working with letters and names. Which one of those, look at those purposes and share which one of those do you often not think about as something that you're teaching when you're working with letters and names. Y'all are going to have to share out loud for this one. Alphabet knowledge, visual processing, rapid naming of letters, letter formation, letter picture links, left to right directionality, and writing first name. Is there any?
What was your question again?
Which of those purposes, let's do it this way. Which purpose is the one that like your brain automatically goes to, okay, this is why I'm doing this today? And what is one that you often, like the opposite? What is one of the purposes that you don't think about very often? When you think about working, let's say working with letters. Like I would say, as I start to think about what letters are we going to work on today, I know I'm always working with alphabet knowledge. But a lot of times I don't think about the fact that when I'm teaching this, I'm also teaching the visual processing needed to identify those. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about letter picture links? I noticed as I've gone out and observed a few people working with this plan. Okay, I'm going to switch over here. Let me make this bigger. As you look at, okay, so this is something I want to call your attention to. On this new plan, she's actually listed working with names and working with letters in 2 separate components. You may have a copy or have come across a copy where these 2 are listed together. Remembering that once they have control of their first name, that kind of drops off. We're not even going to review or talk about these 3 pieces, the 3 activities they suggest, which is name puzzles, magnetic letters, and rainbow writing. We're not going to talk about those today because hopefully the majority of your kids have got their name down at this point and you've dropped that part off. If you want to talk about that more, we could do that. Give me a shout and I'll come out and we'll talk about other ways to work with names. All right, so as I zoom in on working with letters, this is what I was wanting to get to here. I'll come out, and a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is any of you, but this is just a common thing that I've seen. A lot of times teachers will choose one of these and kind of stick with it or keep repeating the same one, such as match the letters on an ABC chart. And so kind of as a routine, every time that group comes, they'll pull out their set of letters and ask them to take them off and just match them to the ABC chart. Something that she's actually talking about with here would be to choose the specific letters that your kiddos need. Today I watched a kindergarten teacher who has 2 friends who are still in the pre-A plan. And when she started to analyze, okay, what is it that they really don't know? She discovered there were about 10 letters that they were still really struggling with. And so she chose 5 for each kiddo, and each child was doing different letters to match on their ABC chart, as opposed to all 5 kiddos having the exact same letters. But what I noticed is the same teacher has been doing this same activity every day that she sees those kiddos for the past couple of weeks. There should be some change up in your activities. The next option, she has name letters left to right. Again, that's not just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This would be letters that you know they need work on in an order that's not necessarily alphabet order, but naming them from left to right. find the letter on the ABC chart. Somebody's speaker. Now, you notice on her new plan, she shaded option 5, 6, and 7 because these all, what do you notice about them? I was about to tell you. What do you notice about name a word that begins with a letter, find the letter that makes the sound, name the letter that begins with that word? Why would option 5, 6, and 7 be considered higher level or different? Someone out loud. I'll make it a little bigger so maybe you can see a little better. Is that better? What's the difference between 5, 6, and 7 compared to 1 through 4? I'll wait you out till somebody shares out loud.
Well, they have to produce the sound versus just like looking for something that you tell them.
Thank you, Ms.
Oh.
Camacho.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the big difference in all three of those, it's the sound. And when you add that sound onto it, you're adding another layer of learning and difficulty. What are some questions you have about working with letters options? Do you have any questions? No one?
Okay, I have one.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, so on that section,
Mhm.
we do the alphabet chant like quickly
Okay.
because I thought, according to Jan Richardson, they need a lot of they need to repeat a lot because it's not sinking in. Is that true, or am I just making this?
It's okay. It's not. Okay.
Like
So,
the lower kids need a lot of repetition.
yes.
So my lower groups, we quickly go over.
Do you reread like the alphabet book, like do the book before you get started, or okay, you're holding something up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but of course mine is in Spanish where we say the letter, sound, picture, no hand motion. We just quickly do it because I always thought that the lower kids need this repetitiveness. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong.
I don't think there's any doing it wrong, especially for you guys in pre-K. Understanding that developmental curve and their exposure is going to all be different. So doing that with the book or with the chant isn't going to hurt. Now, as far as what Jane Richardson recommends, it's not a piece that she specifically says is part of the pre-A lesson.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any friends on here who went to the KTOT conference that she spoke at not long ago. I know I've had a couple people ask me or share that Jan Richardson actually said to them that she didn't really see the purpose in like our word wall chant that we do. Okay. I think the one thing to keep in mind is that it does take time. So at this point in the year, if you've still got some kiddos who you feel like need that, I would do some assessment to find out specifically which letters are they struggling with, just to make sure that I'm not going through the whole alphabet when they don't really need the whole alphabet still.
Okay.
That would be my only concern, especially at this point in the year, is am I doing something with the full alphabet when these 3 kids sitting in front of me really have control of certain letters and we don't have to keep reviewing those letters?
Okay.
So I know that's not a super clear answer.
Okay. No, that's fine.
as to what you're looking for, but it's a valuable process at this point in time. If you feel like they're still needing it, I would really investigate, do they need it for all letters, or do I need to take some letters and practice on just specific ones? Because the one thing about the book being in alphabetical order, it's still offering that support of the order
Right.
for them. And would they be able to do the same things if the letters were out of order?
Right. Okay.
So,
Okay. That makes sense.
Great question. Okay. If nobody else has a specific question with this component, since it's 407, so working with names and working with letters, I want you to look at the time. So she recommends that working with names should take 2 to 3 minutes and your letter activity should take 2 to 3 minutes. I would dare to guess that some of you have a hard time fitting even just those 2 activities in 6 minutes. You have to really keep yourself moving to stay on target. Now, if 6 minutes is all your kiddos can handle, hopefully by this point in time, they're working up to around 10 minutes. It would be okay to stop and this be today's lesson, and then you would pick up with day 2 with sounds and the book. There are several teachers, especially with your shortened time frame, who separate this pre-A lesson into 2 days versus 1. I will say Jan Richardson's intent is that this lesson be taught fully in 1 day in about a 20-ish minute setting. All right, let's move on to working with sounds. She offers 3 options: clapping syllables, hearing rhymes, and sorting pictures. Again, same thing. If I see, let's say this is my lowest group that I'm hoping to see every day. If I'm doing this as a 1-day plan, I would not do clapping syllables with them every single day. If I'm doing this as a 2-day plan, then I might do this with them on day 2, but then when I see them on day 4, I would choose something else. Clapping syllables is pretty much exactly what it looks like. I do know a lot of times our friends have a hard time with clapping. So I know we've talked about in other trainings, incorporating your body, doing other things with syllables. Somebody share, what is something else you do other than clapping syllables? Somebody. I'm going to start calling. All right, Miss Black, Patricia, I see you.
Okay, snapping.
Okay.
Some of them can, some of them can't, but they really like it because they want to try to see if they can do it.
Okay, so snapping.
I've seen the whole like this here.
Going up your arms. Okay. Anybody else have a fun one that they find helpful or works well with their kids?
Head and shoulders.
Your head, shoulders, and knees, toes. I know I was with a teacher not long ago. Sorry, I'm trying to move something on that thing won't come off. That actually had kids jumping forward. Sometimes getting that whole body in there can help. All right, hearing rhymes. Please don't feel like you have to hang out forever with hearing rhymes. Again, I've had some questions before about, okay, my kids really have a hard time with rhymes. And so I'm going to keep repeating this hearing rhymes over and over. Hearing rhymes is very difficult, especially for second language learners. So you want to do games and activities with rhymes, but do not feel like this is the only thing you have to do. Like I said, I've actually talked to a couple teachers lately who they just hang out here. Remember, you should kind of be rotating through these 3 options. Now, sorting pictures. This is that part that this will kill you on time if you don't already have your pictures pre-selected. Remember, at this pre-A level, they should be working with initial consonants. If you find that they're ready for medial or final sounds, they may be ready to move on to the next plan. Okay, working with books. Let's go back up. Working with sounds is around 2 to 3 minutes. Then you should begin working with books. Notice it's scheduled for around 5 minutes. Now, I'm going to ask, do you check this off before you start the lesson, during the lesson while you're working with a book, or after based on what the kids did? This is not necessarily, but sort of a trick question. What do you think?
I'm here to disinfect your room.
Okay.
I do mine before, so I'll know
Okay.
what I'm teaching,
Okay.
what the content is.
Hey, Andrea, what do you base your decision when you decide? To tell you the truth, there's no wrong answer. So before I keep asking you questions, how do you kind of decide what you're going to check? What helps you make that decision?
It depends on the group,
Uh-huh.
Especially their ability level. And sometimes I'll check, because that goes fast. Sometimes I'll check like 3 of them because,
Mm-hmm.
it goes really fast. So it depends on the group.
Okay. Yeah. I like that you're talking about knowing your kids. You could always often go back to what you had, or I encourage you to look back at what you've planned and done before. because sometimes I have a habit of sticking with just like a couple, one-to-one and concept of word, and I forget to kind of rotate through these. Remember, at this level, it is a shared reading. So you, the teacher, are reading. Kids still have books in their hands. They're still pointing with their pointer or their finger, trying to match that one-to-one, but you are all reading chorally together. And then, yeah, just like Andrea pointed out, you would want to have a teaching point right after you're done. I've seen some teachers who point out one of these right before. There's no necessarily one is wrong or one is right, as long as you're connecting to behaviors that readers use. Any questions about working with books or working with sounds?
I have a question.
Yes, I see a question, Ms. Bowen.
How often can you use the same book?
Good question. Anybody else want to respond first? What are your thoughts? Could you use the same book more than once? Patricia, you're shaking your head. When would you use one more than once?
I think I would do like for something like it would do for the one-to-one matching or for a letter, and then we can go back and do something else like the concept of a word. Later on, we could use the same book. Now we're talking about a word. Last time we were talking about a letter.
So Patricia, when using a book for a second time, would you use it again the very next day? So if you were able to get to the work with a book one day, would you use it again the next day? Or would you come back to it later after you've seen some other books?
Probably. I mean, I think I would do I would get different groups with the same book, and then I would get another book, and then maybe go back to that one for another concept.
Okay.
But,
yeah. So Patricia, to answer Kelsey's question, Kelsey, right? That's your first name?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All of a sudden I thought, did I say the wrong first name? If I do that to y'all, I'm so sorry. The way the plan is intended, and if you look at her instructions, she really does intend for a new book each day. But you also have to keep in mind, I know you guys are teaching with a shortened day. You're not in a full day, and so sometimes your time frame may be less. You may only get to 2 pieces of this lesson per day. So it might be essentially another almost 2 more days before you ever came back to work with the book. So if you felt like they really needed another day with that same book, I think that's totally okay. I wouldn't use a book more than 2 days in a row or 2 cycles in a row, if that makes sense. Because we do want to give them that exposure to other pieces of text. And then of course, coming back to it, if you used it, because you're using level A books here, as your kiddos move into the emergent plan and you want to go back and use a book that you had read chorally, but now they're going to have a chance to try to read it on their own, that would be totally fine to bring it back in later on. All right. I'm going to keep us moving. If you guys have questions, please, please, please type them in the chat, and I will go back and look at the chat a little later on. All right. The last component of the pre-A lesson is interactive writing and cutting up a sentence. This is done on a sentence strip. Now, Jan Richardson says to go ahead and have your sentence planned. It's a dictated sentence. I will be honest, I do try, like let's say I was with a group today that read, it was a book about a baby. It's just called Baby. Baby is crying, baby is eating, baby is playing. So I would have already come up with a sentence, babies cry, or the baby cries, something that's from the book, but I would still let the kids feel like they had some say in that. Like, oh, we want to write about today's text. What was something the baby was doing? The baby was eating. So even though in my plan, I had planned to write about the baby crying, I might choose to write the baby is eating. It's probably not the best example, but I do like to take just an extra minute or so to let the kids feel like they have some ownership in coming up with what we're going to write. As a good teacher, you're also able to kind of guide that discussion, if you will, to help get to the sentence that you want to build together. Now, one thing that I think is really important to this, I noticed somebody up here I saw put in the link to the website. Okay, I can't remember who it was. Somebody, I missed you. You put it in, the link to the website and the password. If you use that, she does have great videos, and I really encourage you, if you've never watched the video of how Jan Richardson does this interactive writing, please go watch it, because she gives you good information about what your other kids are doing at the table. If you've got 5 kiddos there, it's not, they have something in front of them. She actually has them keep their alphabet chart in front of them, and they are actually writing on the bottom of it at the same time that you're calling on one of them to write the first letter of baby. Or maybe you've got a kiddo who knows the word is, and they're helping you write the I and the S. So interactive writing is really hard to just describe without actually watching it. So I'd really encourage you to look back through the comments, and I will post these or send them to you. Yes. So it looks like Patty, how you inserted that for us. The password is results, is what she said. I didn't tell you, she did. All right, we're running close on time. Questions or struggles about the interactive writing? How many of you actually get to this interactive writing piece frequently with your groups? Is there anyone? Okay. It's
I
hard
just-
to, go ahead.
I just been breaking mine into 2 days because,
Okay.
and that way I can see more groups.
So on that second, when you see a group on a second day, which parts do you do on your second day with them?
Starting with working with the book and the interactive writing.
Okay. What, so share, if you don't mind, what's a struggle that you've encountered with the interactive writing?
I mean, I've only done it for a week.
That's okay. That's totally okay. She
So
tried it at least once or twice, so.
yeah, so I mean, I just have them use the ABC chart, find the letter or the, the beginning sound that we're looking for, and then they write on it the sound, and then one of them will write on the sentence strip. So we make our sentence or whatever, and then I cut it up, but they have a hard time putting it back together.
Okay, so the putting it back together is hard. So when you get ready to put it together, do you give each of them a piece of the sentence, or do you kind of keep it right in front of you, like mixed up? And then
I've just put it in front of me, kind of mix it up, and then I read back to them what our sentence said.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to pick out the sounds and the letters that they wrote on their chart.
Perfect. Yeah. No, you're doing fine. This is hard because you guys, this is one area where we haven't done a whole lot of formal training in, and you guys, we could spend a whole day just breaking apart this particular lesson structure and each of the components of it. Kelsey, though, to help you think through interactive writing, if they're struggling with the parts in front of you like that, you might actually try giving each kiddo a piece of that cut apart sentence. And then actually what I would do before I even gave them the pieces, I would have several times we would orally rehearse what our sentence says. Let's say it says the baby is crying. So what did we write? The baby is crying. And I'm even going to count. The baby is crying. Okay, turn to your partner and tell your partner, what did we write? The baby is crying. Planning and oral rehearsal is a great tool for early writers and readers to use. Then have them turn around, give them each a word, and you even could say it and hand the to somebody, not in order, the baby is crying. And then have them, okay, now we're going to build our sentence again. Who has the word the? And then put it down. Who has baby? And then put it down. That might, if they've got some control and you've done a lot of rehearsal, that might help with that. Okay, 421. Let's keep moving a little bit here. Again, same thing. If you have questions or struggles with one of these components, please type them in over there, and I will reread when I'm done and send out maybe some feedback through the classroom. Okay, I'm just looking at comments real quick. All right, let's keep going. Back over to our slideshow. So I'm going to leave this picture in the slideshow, and I'll share. Actually, you know what? Instead of putting all this into the Google Plus for you guys, since it's about to go away, I'm going to put everything in the classroom. I'll put the video of our chat and the slideshow in there, so you could go in and look at this since you don't have the book in your classroom. But I really liked this chart because it helped me go back to look at what is the purpose. Like when I'm working with sounds, what is my purpose? My purpose is phonological and phonemic awareness. And so a lot of what I'm doing is dealing a lot with just that sound. So it just breaks down each part. It gives you what the purpose is and the actual steps to do that. All right, let's move here. Okay, so real quick, we're going to talk about the emergent reader. Actually, I'm going to skip that. Here, let's do it like this. Let's look at what a kiddo who is in the emergent plan should be doing so that you know if you've got any kiddos that might be able to start moving up to this. Don't worry about the quote. Let's look at this. So children who are emergent readers do these things. They can write their first name without a model. So think about your kids that you've currently are working in a pre-A plan. They can write their name without a model. Can they identify about 40 upper and lowercase letters? I strongly, kind of with our first discussion early on, I say about, because you don't want to, it's not a hard and fast rule like, oh, I'm not going to move them up to the emergent plan because they only know 35 letters. You've got some leeway in that. You've got to know your kiddos. Can they demonstrate left to right directionality? They've really got a hold of things go from this way to this way, with opposite for you since you're on a screen. But do they understand enough English to follow simple directions? Do they know at least 8 sounds? Whoops. So if you've got kiddos that are meeting most of these things, they may be ready. And especially for those of you who are already, you've kind of stepped back from the interactive writing and you're already having them kind of try to build their sentence in a little journal right there with you, you may really be ready to follow more of the emergent plan versus the pre-A plan. If they've got a few sounds under their belt, you're still going to get to work on phonemic awareness. Here is what the components of an emergent plan are if you haven't looked at them yet. We start to review sight words. This is a really difficult part for your friends. So she suggests 3. You may only be able to start reviewing 1 at a time. You introduce a new book. You do a picture walk and you discuss the book. You read the book together and talk about it. You have a teaching point, but there is still time to do word or letter study after you've worked with the book with this particular plan structure. And then you move into guided writing, which is starting to put a little bit more responsibility on them trying to write rather than you being such a strong support in the interactive writing. So if you feel like you've got some kids that are ready or you're kind of questioning, like, have I been working in the pre-A plan, but really I should be using an emergent plan, give me a call or shoot me an email and I'd love to come out and sit with you. You also can ask your coach. I'm sure they can walk through that with you. There's not really an expectation, though, that you should have a lot of kids ready for this. Most of your kids probably should be still working with this plan here. So, okay, before we leave and stop, I'm going to zip us through a little bit faster. Someone share, how do you plan and prepare? What is your process? For example, for me, I often have a day or set aside a day where I'm just going to sit down and reread through my notes on my plans from the previous week and kind of start to make myself notes of what I need to do moving forward. I like just a sticky note rather than writing directly on the plan. I'll put a sticky note with Group A and think about what were their strengths, what were their weaknesses, what kind of book did we read, and then I will use that sticky note as I go to select new books and fill out my new plan. Someone share their process for planning, if you don't mind. Does anyone have a structure, or are you pretty just like, hey, grab a book and get started? Nobody? I think we've lost some friends. Okay.
I fill out my sheets before Monday, so I'll know who's coming to me, what I'm working on.
So Andrea, do you like fill out the lesson plan format and then go select a book based on kind of the letters they're working on and the sounds they're working on, or do you choose the book and then kind of fill out your plan?
I choose the book the day of what we're working on, like before they come to me. But
Okay.
everything else I fill out. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't know what books I have, like when I do this at home on
Gotcha.
Sunday. So I will choose the book on Monday when we get here. So,
Okay.
but everything else I fill it out before.
Okay. So if you were trying to set like a goal as far as planning, it might be to either like pick 2 groups that you're going to choose a book and take it home. Especially because as you move off of this pre-A plan, knowing the book to connect to everything else will be really important.
Yeah.
But there's not, the only thing that's really that you want connected to the book is going to be that interactive writing.
Right.
But I know you're a lot like me. I often was taking home the plans and 1 copy of each book for each group over the weekend to finish up at home. All right, we're almost out of time. So what are some areas that we could troubleshoot today? I want to give you a chance before we sign out. What is something that's giving you struggles or difficulty with your small groups? And it can be anything from managing kids. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments as I'm talking. Managing kids, managing materials, parts of the lesson plan that you don't understand. No new ones that we haven't addressed. All right. Any other questions just in regard to anything with the Google Classroom, family engagement plan, curricular resources? Any other questions before we head out? Nope. All right. Well, y'all are all super quiet today. So hopefully you've just at least been able to kind of rethink this plan. I do encourage you to beg, borrow, and steal the yellow book from someone on your campus and at least get access to the website and watch her videos, keeping in mind that in pre-K, you definitely have that freedom to separate that lesson structure across 2 days instead of 1. So, all right. Well, that's it, you guys. Thanks for joining me. You guys have a good afternoon and holler at me if you have any questions.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you.
later. Goodbye.
Bye.